One of the most important things to think about when you're evaluating the health of relationships is to start with yourself. You can't really control what other people do. You can only control what you do, how you react, and how you grow. We so often focus on what others are doing when we're interacting and reflect on the anger or the fear, the ego, the blame. Really building and sustaining healthy relationships is all about you. You're not required to have a relationship with anyone, but you're complicit in how you show up, how you feel, and how you act. No one's responsible for that but you. And while I understand that this is an interesting way to start a relationship quest, know that it's really hard to take an honest look at yourself and reflect rawly. You're responsible for relationships. And so let's start this quest by assessing where you are in your own evolution of health for your part of the relationships around you, before we then build on that foundation and talk about interactions with others. So how do you do that? This week is all about assessing how you show up in relationships. The truth is, whether we're willing to admit it or not, everyone brings toxicity from their history, their subconscious beliefs, their proverbial ish, as we call it, into relationships. Let's clear some of that out so we can give your new healthy relationships a chance to thrive. So when you start thinking about knowing yourself and your own toxicity, it's really important to understand your emotions, your thoughts, your behaviors. You don't want to give yourself a hard time about it or come from a place of self-sabotage, but instead come from a mindset of what I can learn, or what are my patterns that show up that create angst or friction, or don't feel comfortable to my body or soul. Regularly examining motivations, recognizing patterns and reactions, and understanding strengths and weaknesses is important for self-reflection. Treating yourself with kindness, grace, and prioritizing self-care as you move through this growth and evolution is super important. Emotion is a choice, mindset's a choice. So focus on what you're grateful for and practice optimization and reframing challenges as opportunities for lessons. Be committed to continuous self-improvement, setting personal goals, challenging your comfort zone, and be opening to listen and learning. You're going to think about, do you manage your emotions effectively? Emotional regulation and resilience. How do you bounce back from friction or setbacks? Do you observe both points of view from a discerning place? These are things that are essential for relational health. It's imperative to develop coping strategies for stress, practicing relaxation techniques, and reframing negative thought patterns. Do you strike a balance between autonomy and connection? Do you maintain a sense of self while you're being open to collaboration and compromise? When you're in relationships, do you water that relationship by cultivating learning and interest outside of those relationships? Do you believe in mutual respect for differences? Do you have unconditional love for the unique individual's differences? All of these things are really important to think about. So I know I just flew through those. Know that later in this week, in this presentation, we'll be doing a self-assessment. So, just start thinking about those. Take notes on what came up when I was talking through this slide, and just let yourself breathe a little bit. Breathe into the fact that you're accepting everyone has their own toxicity, everyone brings their own boulders, subconscious boulders, and just start reflecting on that. How you show up in the world is complex, right? It's a lot. It's how you present yourself, how you engage with others, and how you contribute to that environment. We've talked about that in the past quest. It's a combination of your behaviors, your attitudes, how you communicate, how you present yourself. All of those collectively shape the perceptions others have of you and influence the impact you make in various contexts. But the way you show up in the world should always reflect your authenticity, your values, your intentions, as well as your ability to navigate social interactions, address challenges, and contribute positively to your communities. It really is an ongoing process of self-awareness, growth, and intentional action. All of those should be aimed at aligning your actions with your values and honoring yourself with radical acceptance. At the end of the day, it's just being fearless about aligning your actions with your values and your authentic self, and expressing exactly who you are and your needs without fear of judgment as you show up in every single interaction, in every single relationship, every second of every minute of every day. Because here's the bottom line. If you can't be your true and authentic self in relationships fully, you're not really having true connection. And as a result, you can't really have true relationships because you're not showing up as yourself, and you're not showing up true to yourself or the relationship as a result. Reflecting your own ways should not be rushed. There's so many quotes out there, but here's some of my favorite as you self-reflect. Really think through what they mean to you and your future self operating in relationships that are reciprocal, that are thriving, and filled with unconditional love. As long as you leave to others the responsibility to make you happy, you'll always be miserable because that's actually your job. Another one, far too many people are looking for the right person instead of trying to be the right person. A healthy relationship keeps the doors and windows wide open. Plenty of air is circulating and no one feels trapped. Relationships thrive in this environment. Keep your doors and windows open. If the person's meant to be in your life, all the open doors and windows in the world will not make them leave. Trust the truth. Think through those quotes and think about any quotes that are favorites of yours about relationships and what that really truly means to you. Because part of this is really getting to the core of what you want relationships to be. Because at the end of the day, this is all about you and you setting standards for the relationships you're having. So let's start digging more into how to uncover and rid ourselves with any of the toxicity that we're holding and bringing into our existing and future relationships, because it's all about making them healthier, right? In order to start identifying toxicity, we just need to level set on the framing for the definition of toxicity. And while I'm talking about the definition, it's important to think through your own definition of toxicity. This will just give you a running start, right? As with any of our quests and classes, this is all about learning. What you take from it and what resonates with you is up to you. Be discerning. Toxicity in relationships manifests as behaviors, as dynamics, as patterns that undermine, ultimately, the well-being, the growth, and the harmony of the individuals involved in the relationships and the interactions. This can include a wide range of qualities and interactions that are detrimental and that erode trust, respect, and emotional safety within that relationship. And for those of you who are spiritual, if you're not spiritual, skip to the next slide. Think about toxicity in relationships as interactions that obstruct the soul's journey to wholeness, love, and self-realization. It's those things that hinder growth by fostering negative energy, stagnation, and disconnection from one's higher self, and as a result, lower your energy and vibration, and in effect, affect your divine purpose. So that's just a running start on the definition of toxicity. Now let's talk a little bit about how to identify toxicity in relationships. And while it's not an exhaustive list, again, I wanted to give you some tools and resources to get you started delving into the dissection of your own toxicity. So if you think about respect and empathy, when individuals are in a relationship, any kind of relationship, fail to honor each other's feelings or boundaries or autonomy, it essentially creates an environment without mutual respect and empathy. This can be very flagrant fouls, and it can also feel like the proverbial death by paper cut, small things, small comments. And as a result, a complete disregard for the inherent worth and dignity of each person. This is toxicity. Another characteristic is dishonesty and betrayal. Trust forms the bedrock of healthy relationships. When trust is breached through deceit, infidelity, betrayal, subtle tones, subtle jabs, it leads to deep emotional wounds and undermines the foundation of that relationship. And because it creates that wound, that takes a lot to heal. Toxic relationships also involve manipulation tactics and power struggles, manipulation and control, right? That frequently are coming from a place of individual fear and ego, where one party seeks to exert control over the other's thoughts, emotions, or actions. Its manipulative behavior can take various forms. It can include gaslighting, emotional blackmail, or coercion. Again, these tactics can be overt and they can be subtle. For example, there's passive-aggressive humor that cuts, right? So really think about this. Are you engaging in any of these characteristics about toxicity? Even if they're small things, simple things, they're still big deals in creating a lack of harmony in relationships. Similarly, an atmosphere of criticism, negativity, and contempt really poisons the climate, the emotional climate of the relationship. When partners or friends consistently belittle, demean, or undermine each other, no matter how overt or subtly, it can erode self-esteem and breeds resentment. And it creates an unending cycle of negativity. At the end of the day, it detracts from the positive energies and natural flow state of the relationship, even if you're not meaning to. Unresolved conflict and hostility is also a big one. In toxic relationships, or in toxicity, conflicts may escalate into destructive cycles of blame, defensiveness, or in its most dramatic state, open hostility, with little effort invested in resolution. Avoidance of conflict resolution actually ends up creating unhealthy baggage or boulders, which perpetuates the toxicity. More characteristics of toxicity are codependency. This is toxicity that's present in so many relationships that goes unidentified. People don't like to think of themselves as codependent. But when you think about what codependent relationships are characterized by, it's an unhealthy reliance on each other for validation, identity, or emotional fulfillment. And I'm not just talking about partners, I'm talking about with anybody. This dynamic happens when either party that's engaging in the relationship is not whole as an individual, and then engages in said relationship, and then expects the others to fill this void, both consciously and subconsciously. A question to ask yourself to cut to the heart of this is, do I need this relationship or do I want it? There's a very distinctive difference. If you're not meeting all of your own needs first, you can't pour into other relationships. Bottom line, period. This dependency on others to make you truly whole fosters an imbalanced dynamic where individual boundaries and autonomy are sacrificed. And no one's ever going to make you happy if you can't make yourself happy first, and if you're coming from a place of lack and need. Toxic relationships also often isolate individuals from supportive networks of friends, family, community. This isolation exacerbates dependency on the toxic relationship and prevents access to outside perspectives and resources. This doesn't have to be something that is, someone you're having a relationship with isolating you. This can literally be you isolating yourself because of your actions, of how you live every day. So really think about that. Stagnation and lack of growth is huge in relationships these days. Rather than nurturing personal and relational growth, toxic relationships inhibit development and evolution. So, two people having a relationship may feel stuck in patterns of dysfunction and unable to break free and pursue their aspirations and potential. It's really important to think about each person as an individual who constantly needs watering and care, just like a plant. And then the same for the relationship. If you don't do all of those simultaneously, the growth is stunted. And then lastly, spiritual disconnection and disharmony. Again, skip ahead if you're not someone who spirituality resonates with. But ultimately, toxicity in relationships creates spiritual dissonance that distance individuals from their innate essence, their inner wisdom and connection. Instead of facilitating spiritual growth and alignment with higher principles of love and compassion, toxicity obstructs the soul's journey towards wholeness and enlightenment. Again, those aren't an all-encompassing list of toxicity and characteristics of toxicity. But as you're reflecting on those, it's easy to say, nope, I don't isolate. Nope, I'm not codependent. But really take a hard look at how you operate minute by minute, day to day, as you interact with others. Just because you're someone who can operate on your own does not mean you're not codependent. You might be codependent on your friends for validation and self-confidence. You might be codependent on your partner for activities and fun. Really think about it. Take a hard, raw look at yourself, because it's really important in order to have healthy relationships that you're filling your own proverbial cup first. So now that we've level set on what toxicity is and some methodologies to identify red flags or how toxicity shows itself, let's really dig into any toxicity that you're bringing into the equation. I would recommend that you take your time over this week to really think through this assessment. Don't rush it. Really reflect on each topic and be raw and truthful with yourself. What toxic mud are you covered with that we need to clean off? The other thing about this, as I go through the topics, go ahead and add your own questions to it as you're answering it. Go ahead and add other things. At the end of the day, the more toxic mud about relationships and what we carry into relationships that we can clean off before we start building healthy new relationships and making our existing relationships better, the better off we are. So the first topic to self-reflect on is your communication patterns. Really assess how you communicate in various relationships. Really list out the different relationships in your life and really reflect on how you communicate. Do you actively listen? Do you express yourself honestly? And do you encourage open dialogue? Do you dominate conversations? Do you dismiss feelings? Do you have any passive-aggressive behavior? Do you suppress your own voice or innermost feelings? Do you leave it all on the table? How do you show up in your communication patterns? Now let's take a look on reflecting whether you tend to exert control or manipulate thoughts and actions and emotions in interactions, whether you mean to or not. Are you respectful of autonomy and choices? Or do you feel the need to dictate and manipulate situations to your advantage? And when you're thinking about this, I don't want you to think, manipulate has such negative connotations. And manipulating is negative, right? But I don't want you to go to the most dramatic version of manipulation. I want you to really think about, do you judge how others show up and want them to change to showing up how you do? I want you to think about, why is that important to you? What does that really reflect about you when you observe it from afar? When we need to control something, it should serve as an indicator, something or someone, right? It should serve as an indicator for ourselves that it's really a trigger of something that we need to heal or something that we need to work on. Because if it was healed, we wouldn't care about controlling anybody but ourselves. So really think about that. And then let's evaluate your respect for boundaries. Consider how you respect boundaries in relationships. Do you honor limits and preferences? Or do you push the boundaries? Do you frequently push to state your case or convince someone differently, or ignore their boundaries, or discount their boundaries without even meaning to? Are there things that lead to discomfort or reactions or resentment in the body language of people you're having relationships, or your mind or your body? Really think about that. And then reflect on how you handle conflicts and disagreements within relationships. Can you agree to disagree? Can you see the seeds or benefits to the other party's thoughts? Do you approach conflicts with empathy, active listening, and a willingness to find mutually beneficial solutions? Do you create that safe space to engage in a healthy conversation, or you just avoid it? Do you resort to any hostility or even deflection? Do you blame shift? Do you escalate tensions? Do you hinder resolution? Really think about, how do you handle conflict in any situation? And is it different in different types of relationships? And what does that mean? Are you showing up authentically as you and using your voice? Also, take stock of how you express feedback and criticism towards others. Do you offer constructive feedback with kindness and empathy, focused on mutual growth? Do you talk from a place of you versus pointing the finger at them? Or do you habitually criticize, belittle, focus on faults, or even foster negative cycles versus resolution without even knowing it? Really think through that. Think about certain situations over the last month where there was rub or friction in any relationships, and really analyze it. Take yourself into observer mode. What did you make it mean? How did it happen? What does it mean for you? What do you own in it? Really think about that. Consider your emotional availability and responsive to others' needs. Are you present? Are you attuned to their feelings? Are you offering support? Are you offering validation? Or do you withdraw? Do you dismiss their emotions? Do you not really listen? Do you not focus on what they're saying? Do you talk about other topics? Are you really focused on what they're saying next? Or are you really truly listening? Do you create distance and disconnection? And then think about it from the other side. Are you being too validating or too available at your own self-detriment? Is the emotional availability reciprocal? Really reflect on that. And then think about your integrity and trustworthiness in relationships. And what I mean by that is, do you prioritize complete and radical honesty, transparency, fidelity, trust Do you fib a little? Do you tell white lies? Or do you gossip? Or do you hold back on vocalizing exactly how you feel? Do you act differently inside and outside of that relationship with your actions and your words? Do you withhold information? How are you complicit in not showing up exactly how you are or in eroding the stability in those relationships? Also, think about reflecting on your patterns of dependency. And we talked about this a little bit on the earlier slide. But really look at your level of independence and self-reliance within relationships. Do you maintain a healthy sense of autonomy and encourage others to do the same? Or do you exhibit those codependent tendencies? Is it part of your identity or security in that relationship? Do you foster the personal growth of all parties in the relationship? And what are some of the hidden resentments that you carry, that you say inside your head? And why do you carry them? What does it mean? Are there patterns? And then reflect on how you interact with your relationships support network. So, do you encourage and support their connections with friends, with family, with outside resources? Or do you discourage them from that external support system? And why? And what does it mean? And are you making assumptions on what it means about you by making judgment about their external support systems? Do you? Don't you? Again, just reflect on it. And then lastly, consider your willingness to acknowledge and address toxic behaviors within yourself. Are you open to self-reflection and personal growth and seeking help when needed? Or do you deny and rationalize your toxic behaviors, your toxic communications? Do you excuse it away? Do you judge? Really be raw with yourself. You've got to own this. If not, you're perpetuating harmful patterns within yourself, one, but also within your relationships. Really think about the fact that our relationships are only as healthy as we are whole. And so our goal is to make sure you're whole as we're reflecting on making healthy relationships. Take your time to really assess this and radically own your own toxicity and ish so that everything from then on is much healthier for you, for your dynamics, and for all of your relationships. Now that we've spent some time identifying your toxicity, let's spend some time talking about how to release that toxicity. I do want to remind you that most toxicity stems from deep-rooted subconscious boulders. And there are several quests in our community to help you process those boulders. I would highly encourage you to take time out to complete the classes and exercises in both the Unleashing Your Inner Phoenix and Loving Yourself with Complete Confidence quest if you haven't already. As you navigate through the dissection of your own toxicity, it's important to remember to both give yourself grace and to not hesitate to reach out to professional and personal support as you need it. Because understanding when you need expertise and support is just as important as understanding yourself thoroughly in this process. At the end of the day, your toxicity wasn't created overnight. And creating healthy relationships won't be created overnight either. This is a complex process of evolution. With that said, though, some methodologies to start tackling your own toxicity start with cultivating self-awareness. You really want to begin by engaging in this deep introspection to identify your own toxic behaviors, triggers, and patterns. We just went through the assessment, and so really take your time to think about that and to really assess what those are for you. And also think about actively cultivating mindlessness and self-reflection practices, whether it's meditation, journaling, therapy, whatever it is for you. Walk in the woods, whatever helps you cultivate mindfulness, not mindlessness, and to gain clarity on your thoughts, emotions, and actions. You also want to practice radical honesty and vulnerability. You want to foster honest and open communications, expressing your feelings, your needs, and your boundaries. Embrace vulnerability as a strength and share your authentic self without fear of judgment or rejection. Create that safe space for speaking your truth and be heard without defensiveness or criticism. You want to also establish clear boundaries to protect your emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being within relationships. You want to be able to communicate your boundaries assertively and compassionately and honor others' boundaries with empathy and respect. Boundaries really do create a framework for mutual respect, trust, and safety. Just a side note here that's important. Next week in the relationship class will be all about boundaries, so stay tuned for important information to support you here. So I just wanted to mention it so you didn't worry about the boundaries for now. So stay tuned. You also want to practice forgiveness and compassion, releasing resentment and grudges and past hurts, and embracing forgiveness to forge your own pathway to healing and liberation. Here's the thing. Forgiveness is all about you. What you're carrying impacts every minute of your day, and as a result, every relationship that you have, whether you know it or not. We're coming into interactions with our own lenses, honed from our own experiences, thoughts, and behaviors. And we make assumptions when we see it through our own eyes, or label the interactions, whether we know it or not. You also want to embrace a growth mindset and commit to ongoing personal and relational development. Cultivate self-awareness by learning from your past mistakes and see those past mistakes as lessons to learn from, just truly and simply that. And if you need to, forgive yourself as well. You don't need to carry it after you learn your lessons, and see it as seeking opportunities for that growth and transformation. Lastly, you want to cultivate acts of kindness, generosity, and mutual appreciation for yourself and others. Because the more you operate out of your heart space and from a higher energy frequency, the more that you'll receive back. And the more you clean out your toxic mud, the more you'll have the space to operate from that heart space, because you've cleaned out that muddy mud and it's much more clarity. You are co-creating relationships that actually nurture reciprocity, support, mutual growth, learning, evolution, radical acceptance, and unconditional love.